Before I begin this editorial, I hope that anyone who watches this is doing well and that their family, friends and acquaintances are also well and safe. The coronavirus pandemic continues. Here in the UK we have already seen that it cannot easily be quelled. After playing through The Last of Us Part 2 twice, and whilst beginning to create the review, it became clear that the game warranted an editorial, a piece that was able to be subjective rather than as objective as it could be. Although I had included some fleeting cursory comments on some of the issues surrounding the game, there was no way I could explore and discuss the story, characters and narration, which prompted the controversy swirling around the game like some perpetual fog. To that end, I will make it very clear that the following are my own opinions. If they fall in line with others, then that is coincidental. One thing is for sure, the negativity enforced by certain critics about the game is largely centred around this one area, as the game is technically an improvement over the first, and unlike Fallout 76 and Anthem, is technically complete and largely error-free. So from here on in, I want to make it very clear that there are going to be As I touched upon in the review, many have commented on an idea of the game, having not even played it. However, some who have played it have reacted extremely negatively or badly to the story presented within The Last of Us Part 2. I think we really need also to clarify the difference between the story and narration here, because so many critics seem unable to understand the difference. Story is the what, why and where of the experience. It tells us why the characters are where they are and what they are doing. Stories often have a beginning, middle and an end, but not necessarily presented in that order or in a broken chronological order. French cinema is renowned for this approach, and films such as Pulp Fiction exemplify this approach. Narration is the how the story is conveyed to the user, reader, viewer, player in whichever form or forms of media they are experiencing. There is simply nothing wrong with the narration in The Last of Us Part 2. It is easily as good as in The Last of Us. It is the story of The Last of Us Part 2 that has been so divisive. As a player of a great many type of game experiences, I find myself being pulled into the story. I was intrigued and I wanted to find out what happened next. The story has many complexities to it, nuances for further thought, and a lot of it is conveyed through the characterization of characters, both old and new. I also didn't feel that any of the new characters were thinly represented in any way. After all, in the original game, I didn't initially know who Joel, Ellie or Tess were, but all three elements, the story, characterization and narration that Naughty Dog do so well in an experience like this, soon made me feel as if I had known them for a very long time. The death of Joel is perhaps the most divisive event in the game. Although it wasn't pleasant to watch, it was a bold move in the story, yet we have seen it used before in the original, lest players forget that Tess meets a terrible fate, either to die from the infection or to face, in essence, a firing squad. Many have criticised that there is no exploration of the loss of Joel, which is simply untrue. Not only do we have a period showing a grieving Ellie, but we also see the impact on her mental health, her sanity, later on. Contrast that with Tess. She's only mentioned briefly later on in The Last of Us, at which point Joel largely dismisses any discussion of her. In fact, Joel turns out to be a very self-centered arse, for in the context of the fictional world, let alone reality, so many would have lost so much and learned to go on. That would include Tess and Bill, even Ellie. Yet Joel selfishly clings on to his grief, perhaps because it is shielding him from having to completely face the fragmented world around him. In the first game, it is clear that Tess is carrying him, yet when she is gone, he brushes her aside and buries her. Since The Last of Us could have been left as a standalone experience, I think we also have to take into consideration that Joel's story had been told, as the first game is Joel's story. Of course, Druckner and Naughty Dog could have played it safe and created a second part that had Joel and Ellie go off on some new adventure together, perhaps to find another doctor who might be able to create a vaccine. But I guarantee you that most of the people negatively criticising the game at the moment would have then criticised it for being more of the same. In killing off Joel, The Last of Us Part 2 becomes Ellie's story, and her journey is extremely dark. There are two major forces acting on her. One, having to come to terms with the fact that Joel may have been right all along to save her life. We know that she wasn't the only immune person in existence, that the Fireflies had unsuccessfully tried to create vaccines from other immune volunteers and killed all of them in the process. It is highly unlikely that even if a vaccine existed, that it would have had any effect on the millions of infected in the world, and even if people were vaccinated, it still wouldn't make any of the infected any less dangerous. Most people attacked by the infected aren't dying from being turned. Ellie has to face that, in fact, she isn't a possible saviour of humanity at all, and that the splintered and divided humanity that remains may well not actually last. 2. Having lost Joel, her surrogate father, has pushed her towards insanity. With everything outlined above, as well as her inability to save Joel, her world is falling apart. Revenge, therefore, is the one thing that is holding her together. Although revenge does play a significant theme within the story for both Ellie and Abby, that isn't what the story is about. It goes much further than that. Abby, whom I didn't have a problem with relating to or having any problems with her physique, is also consumed with a revenge. Revenge for the death of her father and a reluctance to accept that the pursuit of a vaccine might have been for naught. In fact, Abby doesn't ever really let go of that, yet Ellie does, which makes Ellie's story even more tragic. Abby's physique is to someone like me not really a major factor, but it can also easily be explained by her medical knowledge and being the daughter of a surgeon. She is clearly competitive, likes weight training and knows which supplements to take. So what? The Last of Us Part 2 isn't even really about loss, although there are losses. What I take above all else from the story is this: that people who are so assured of a particular goal or direction in life, who may devote months, years, decades into the pursuit of something they feel so certain about that keeps them perhaps sane enough to function, as in Ellie's case, more often than not, if they're being honest with themselves, realise that when they reach that objective, it wasn't anything they wanted in the first place. And the cold starkness of reality is again there, staring back at them. Why? Because people aren't stagnant and fixed. Just like time, they change. It is for this reason, more than perhaps any other, that this reviewer feels The Last of Us Part 2 is an exceptional sequel.
Talking away, I don't know what I'm to say, I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shy.